Hey, yeah! Welcome to Beer Christianity. My name is Jonty. This is a short or shot episode. I really need to find a way to say that that's not, awkward. Basically, it's a short shot of Beer Christianity rather than a full pint of an hour-long show. And it's where I discuss something that's just been on my mind and give you some thoughts and then ask you to feedback. You can write to us at beerchristianity@yahoo.com. You can also get hold of us at beerxianity on Twitter and that sort of stuff. This episode is called Love During Wartime, the propaganda episode. Mostly because I watched a great film with Alan Rickman about CBGBs and just loved to see Talking Heads in that because they're great, and there's a great song called Life During Wartime which you should listen to if you've never heard. And also because I've been massively disturbed by just the tone of conversation and the almost one note of feeling that has been generated in this country and in all of my social media contexts virtually. And if you're feeling particularly exercised about it and you're likely to get angry, don't listen to this episode because maybe you will hate me and you'll hate what you hear. And I don't want to upset anybody, but I have questions, and I think the church should be asking them. Anyway, just some thought experiments coming up if you want to listen to that. Beer Christianity will be back soon. We've got an episode with our Muslim Palestinian American friend Ehab coming out soon, where we did a kind of joint one, and we've also got plans for us to meet together and to do a classic interview style, me, Laura, Malky, and a mystery guest. So yeah, check us out, beerchristianity@libsyn.com. All of that said, here is Love During Wartime, the propaganda episode. Picture this for a second. I don't want to make you angry, but picture it. Iran and some like-minded states start cozying up to Mexico. They start giving them bridging capital and loans and gifts and help with their industry and all that sort of stuff, and basically build a really strong political relationship with a country on the border with the USA. And then they say, listen, do you want to be in some kind of military alliance? Because we'd love to, free-thinking peoples of the world unite. We'd love to be in that. And then they say, we'd love to put in just some military hardware and have the right to put some troops in this country. Now, it's two sovereign states doing what they want to do, perfectly legitimate. How would the United States of America react? If China built a really strong relationship with Canada, if Canada wasn't the kind of country that would be automatically reactionary, kind of like South Africa, where I come from, and Britain, where I currently live, if China built that kind of relationship with Canada and was also putting, military bases and that sort of stuff pretty close to the border with the USA, how would the USA react? Because that is what NATO has been doing for the last, 10, 15 years in Ukraine and around the borders of Russia. This is not a podcast that is going to pick Russia's side. It's not communist Mother Russia. It's an oligarchy. Vladimir Putin has a terrible record when it comes to human rights, freedom of expression, all the things we love, LGBTQ rights, all that sort of stuff. The Russian Federation, not great with it. Has to be said, a lot of countries have not been great with, what we consider to be progressive politics. And that's what this episode's about, is just talking about and thinking about, just for a second, whether we're the victims of propaganda. Not trying to say, before you come at me, that Vladimir Putin is a hero, that what he's doing is justified particularly. But just imagine the situation where a group of nuclear-armed, powerful countries who are out and out your enemy say that they want to cozy up to your neighbors and they want to have military hardware there. Ask yourself how the USA would react, considering everything we know about US history. And maybe you don't know a lot about US history, but US history is not filled with non-imperialist, non-militarist interventions in other people's countries. That's why they refuse to be under the authority of the International Court of Justice. There's a little fact for you. Picture something else. Picture the Iraq War or the invasion of Afghanistan. Now, I'm going to come back to these two examples because I think they're quite pertinent, quite pertinent at the moment. But picture at the point where the allies, us, the good guys, go into those countries and start bombing the hell out of them. If at that moment China had said, you know what? No, this is an injustice. All around the world, people are marching. There's millions marching in the streets to say this is wrong. We know it's wrong. We know that Tony Blair is being called a despot by his own people. Look at what he's doing to his own people in the name of anti-terror legislation. Look at what he's doing to, and instead of Uyghurs, you can say the Muslim population of Britain, and even Jean-Charles de Menezes and people who got killed in the crossfire. Look at what he's doing. So we're sending troops. We're going to get involved. We're going to start a war in a country between the two of us that may or may not escalate, because when big imperialist countries, and China is one of them, get involved in wars and it looks like they're losing, they're sore losers generally, and they tend to escalate. Watch what America did in Vietnam. Okay? Which is, by the way, where that happened a little bit with the Chinese getting involved, also Korea. But picture that post 9/11 state of anxiety and hyped upness, and we have to do something, and people just being willing to swallow almost any bullshit because they felt frightened and they felt angry. We're post-pandemic, we're post a global cataclysm of sorts that has, I think, damaged us psychologically. We are aching for a fight because I think psychologically that's how we feel like we can take control. And you know this, you're having a bad time, you pick a fight with your spouse or a friend or somebody at work or whatever. Picture in that moment a country like China or Russia getting involved in that kind of aggressive way and how it could have got super out of hand and what you would have thought of them doing that. I think you would have thought of them as, not you necessarily, hey, don't want to be combative. I think people would have called that wildly and massively irresponsible, mad, dangerous. And yet this is the rhetoric that we're hearing from our country. I have heard from people within churches who have said that they're going to be deployed. Military personnel. Now, that doesn't mean that that's going to be an out-and-out land war with Russia in winter, by the way. Guys, what are you thinking? But what it makes me think is how we have been propagandized over the last few weeks, and to be fair, the months running up to it, with the kind of background work of anybody who is a competitor for resources with our country must be bad or mad. And now ask yourself why there is so little in the way of opposition to the idea of getting involved. And by getting involved, as I heard in a church recently, the vibe is not getting involved with sanctions. It is do something practical. And in this situation, that feels a lot like a call to war, as if nobody's ever heard Bob Dylan singing "With God on Our Side." And I've spoken about this on this podcast before, the idea that God is somehow on our side, on our military side. And I've heard far too many prayers for one side in the conflict. And again, I want to say invading other people's countries is wrong. Not respecting national sovereignty is wrong. Going against people's wishes, taking more power and more land is wrong. I think it is wrong to provoke people by doing that subtly, as NATO has been doing in Europe. I definitely think it's wrong in the way that Russia has been doing it, just invading fucking countries. And I thought it was terrible when Iraq and Afghanistan were invaded. I thought it was terrible when Yemen had American and British drones flying over it, when Pakistan had American and British drones flying over it. Drone strikes, the air strikes, the detention camps, the extraordinary rendition and kidnapping of people who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, the designating any male over the age of 16 as a combatant and therefore fair game to kill in a drone strike, the occupation of other people's countries, sometimes for centuries, and acting as if, but yeah, it's our right. I disapprove of all of this. What I'm finding scary, partly as a Christian, to hear it in the church, but just generally, is the way people have just been parroting exactly the same line, because we're hearing it from so many different sources. And I just want to ask, are you sure that you are always on the side of the goodies? Like that Mitchell and Webb sketch. Are we the baddies? Again, because I know that people have been messaged, let's say, I'm not saying that Ukraine are the baddies. I am saying that Ukraine feels a lot like an ally of the West, and probably a puppet of the West at this point. And I am not sure that we have been hearing a lot of why this is happening. Invading countries is its own reward in a lot of ways. There is a lot to be gained from gaining the largest country. I learned in a pub quiz recently, the largest country entirely in Europe. And there is a lot to gain for a Russian leader who reunites what is psychosocially considered the Russian world in terms of popularity and in terms of just a sense of a right to those countries, in the same way that the US feels that it has a right to invade countries that may pose a threat to it, or may have people whose politics they disagree with, or etc., etc., etc. But are we hearing that? No. And don't you think that's strange? Doesn't it give you pause for thought that what we're hearing is Vladimir Putin is evil, or Vladimir Putin is mad? You've seen the incredible overdrive social posts about it. Ukraine is just the greatest country in the world. This guy who you've never heard of, you're suddenly thinking must be a hero because the narrative is just very friendly. We're aware of like guys who were in show business who then went into politics, and they care about the people, and he's probably a really great guy. My question is, why are we not hearing the kind of analysis that talks about why this is happening, in the same way that we eventually heard that it wasn't because Saddam is a madman and he also has weapons of mass destruction and he is a threat to the entire world. Saddam is a madman. Saddam is so evil. Not saying he was a good guy, just saying that in terms of body count, we have some stuff to look at our own backyard. But this is whataboutism, right? This is me going, you can't criticize an enemy of the West because the West is guilty of stuff, so nobody can be bad at anything, or nobody can have done anything evil because blah, blah. Not what I'm saying. I am saying that if you call yourself a Christian, what does take the plank from your own eye before criticizing somebody else mean to you in a geopolitical sense? Not saying that we can't speak out about injustice, not saying that we can't speak out about terrible things being done, oppression, violence, the horrible consequences that are going to happen from this aggression. I'm just asking, have we thought about it? Isn't it eerie how many people have so quickly become like agitated in a particular direction, mostly orientated around hating one country and one man? Isn't that weird? Do you not think it might be propaganda? Propaganda isn't always untrue. Propaganda was used incredibly effectively by the Allies against Hitler. Nothing wrong with that, but worth being aware? Because that propaganda did a really good job to mobilize people to fight, but it was mostly orientated around how awful Germans are, no? It wasn't around the ideology of National Socialism, not the same as socialism, guys. It was mostly, and you can hear because of the rhetoric that goes, you'd be speaking German right now. Who gives a shit if you'd be speaking German? That's not the point. The point is that they would have wiped out every communist, gay person, Jewish person, Roma or traveler person, never mind people with disabilities. That's why they were evil, not because they were the other team. I'm seeing so much stuff on social media that feels like people who have been spoiling for a fight have finally been given the keys to a big arena where we're now going to have a showdown with our traditional hometown competitors, enemies, whatever. And I find the vibe horrifying, and I'm feeling massively alone in this, to be honest, because and again, I totally understand if you're not super confident in your ideology, if you're not a super, distrustful person about messaging from governments, if you don't automatically go, hey, if they're calling the enemies of my country's national interest economically, also the enemies of God and the enemies of all that is right and the enemies of decent thinking history, maybe that's just something I need to check because it seems terribly convenient. If you're not doing that, then I can see, because everywhere on social media, every account seems to be posting this stuff. Accounts you've never seen before seem to be posting this stuff. A lot of stuff has already been labeled as misinformation. Videos of what has happened to Palestinians being posted as if this is happening in Ukraine. Videos of crackdown in Kazakhstan being posted as if this is happening in Ukraine. And all the while, this refrain of, well, Putin's mad and he's evil and Russia are really just a terrible country. And if you don't have a natural cynicism about that, not even cynicism, just a desire to question, then it must feel really hard to question it because, well, they all seem to be saying it. And I just want to say that when you were in Germany in 1939, everybody was saying it. You know, when we had the run up to the invasion in Iraq, a lot of people were saying it. And does that look like a good idea now? I am again, and I don't know how many times I have to say this, not saying it's okay to invade a sovereign country, not minimizing what that is. I'm just asking us, as we go forward in this period of history, to just be a little bit, as Christians, just to step back a little bit and go, God is not on the side of Britain and America automatically. It is not the case that just because we're doing it, it must be the right thing to do. We have been on the wrong side of history before, and we will be again, like every nation has the potential to be. I want to hear more churches praying for wisdom and discernment in what we're hearing. I want to hear more Christians taking a step back from just basically being outlets for nationalist propaganda. And I want to hear just a few more Christians not keen for war and not uncritically beatifying a country that is just as imperfect as Britain or Russia. That's all. Solidarity with all displaced peoples and peoples who live under the brunt of military oppression and violence, and politicians who will play a game as the West will play and Russia will play with this country between them, and like they've done in the past with Afghanistan, those exact countries. All solidarity, but I have been enjoying some of the critique that I've been reading that says, reject all imperialism, do not pick a side and go, oh, I like NATO, or oh, I like Russia in this fight. That's sports thinking and team thinking and kind of bizarre. Don't do it. Pray for peace, pray for justice, and pray for discernment, and just watch and be careful. That's all I wanted to say. I hope you guys are doing all right.